Hello, good afternoon, depending on where you are, say Detroit. Um, Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jim Moran. I am the master printer at Hamilton Woodtype and Printing Museum. And I am joined on the technical side today by Logan Madkey, and of course, the show's executive producer, Stephanie Carpenter. There are just a few housekeeping things that we will go through before we let Signal Return get into it. First of all, we are being recorded, and so of course, if your camera is on, you're going to be visible when we post the recorded one. So these are put on YouTube so that you can watch them at a later time. If you would be kind enough to be muted while the presentation is happening, that'd be most helpful. It just lets them talk without the intermittent background noise and that kind of thing. If you have questions, we ask that you put them into the chat, and we will try to get to them as we can, or we will do them at the end of their portion of it. Because we do have a Q&A period set up. So the last thing I'll say, at least in terms of housekeeping, is that we do like to at least start with a land acknowledgement, and we want to recognize and honor Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of the land. And in this area, that means we're honoring the Menominee, the Ojibwe, the Ho-Chunk, the Potawatomi, and the Dakota tribes. So I would like to introduce Lynn Avadenka. Today's a conversation with Signal Return in Detroit, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving and teaching traditional letterpress, printing, building a community center for art, craft design, and collaboration. In 2011, an empty storefront on Division Street was transformed when Signal Return opened its doors to the public. They partner with other cultural organizations to offer a wide range of related programming. It's free and open to the public. That includes poetry readings, book release parties, and exhibitions. And of course, they run workshops, create prints, have a very interesting range of work in their store, and they're really nice people. So with no further ado, Lynn, I will turn it over to you. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Do I get this?
Yeah, I'm gonna click right here.
Okay.
This one right there.
Ah. Whew. Oh dear. What happened? Are you all there? Here we go. Thanks, Jim, for the introduction and for sort of taking my introduction. We're really glad to be here and to be invited to share what we do with you. I want to say that you'll hear from different voices at Signal Return, members of our team, and the way we amplify the mission that Jim just explained to you. I'm Lynn Avadenka, and I'm the director of Signal Return. I've been serving in this role since 2013. In that role, I'm the grant writer and the program director, along with other hats that I wear. And today I'm serving as the MC, introducing you to other members of our team. The first speaker today is Melinda Anderson, who is an event producer and designer, and in her role with Signal Return is the manager of our upcoming event, Power of the Press Fest. And Melinda, if you're there, you're on.
Okay, I'm there. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here. I have had the privilege of working with the Signal Return team to bring this awesome festival to Detroit. The first Power of the Press Fest was in 2017, and it attracted thousands of visitors and was held as a major cultural event for the region. It was about 3 days, and there were so many activities going on. The second event was postponed this year, for a year due to COVID. So this year we have scaled things down to 1 day, but we still expect a great time because really the whole goal of the festival is to celebrate and attract print lovers and to showcase the amazing print community that we have, not only in Detroit, but also we are attracting artists from other spaces. So the site of the festival is going to be in Shed 5 in the Eastern Market. It happens on Sunday, October the 10th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And Eastern Market is the oldest public market district in the United States. On a Saturday, it attracts about 40,000 people to attend the market. And so Power of the Press Fest is going to gather and feature 50 different print artists working across a variety of medium. So letterpress, screen printing, risograph, wood engraving, paper making, book arts. We have artists coming from Brooklyn, Kalamazoo, Ypsilanti, Pittsburgh, Vermont, as well as from Metro Detroit to share their work. The fest is also going to feature the internationally recognized Quarantine Public Library. And the Quarantine Public Library is a repository of books made by artists during COVID, and it's a crowdsourced project. Anyone can download the books and showcase them themselves. We're also going to have scheduled demonstrations of artistic techniques throughout the day. We'll have wood graving, paper making, book arts, and paper marbling. And then the artists, 53, will be able to sell their work throughout the event. From 12 to 2, we're going to have a band, a local band called the Boblo Islanders. And we're just expecting a really fun time. We're really excited to be able to do this, and we have really been considerate of the time that we're in and working to make sure that all guests feel safe and to have our COVID protocols really intact. And we're just looking forward to opening the doors and bringing some joy to the community and to kind of celebrating print with so many other Detroiters and like-minded individuals like you guys. This is a free event and it's for all ages. And if you are interested in being a part of the festival, you would have to let me know as soon as possible because we are technically closed for artists, but I can leave my email in the chat if you would like more information. So I
thank you, Melinda. That was great. And next, I'd like to introduce Danya Ensing, who is our resident artist and manager of the store, who will talk about running the store and how she selects store products. She'll also discuss a project that she initiated with Lee Marshallonis, our former lead printer.
Hi, everyone. One moment. Okay. So one of the unique things about Signal Return, down the street from the shed where we're going to be having Power of the Press Fest is where we're located. One of the unique things about us is that we have a studio space and a sister store that's right next door. So our retail space sells the work of Midwestern and national letterpress printmakers, as well as some screen prints. Some people on this call, I can't really see the attendees, but maybe some people on this call, we have your work, and that's really great. It also allows us an opportunity to sell some of the work that we make in the studio. These are some of the displays that we have. Lots of Detroit and Midwestern centric products. As Melinda mentioned, the neighborhood we're located in, Eastern Market, is very, very busy on the weekends. So what may be of interest to people in this chat is that has really aided us throughout the years in driving foot traffic. Having the built-in neighborhood traffic is really good for us. This is an example of some projects we've worked on for another local organization called the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. If you aren't familiar with the layout of Detroit, we border the Detroit River, and just across, like a maybe 30-minute swim, if you could swim it, is Canada. So we have a really beautiful riverfront that this organization has helped really amp up in the past few years. So these are two locations along our riverfront that we really love, and we've made posters for the organization. And then we get to sell them in the store, which the public can then access. sorry, I think this is going. Okay, so another project that we're really excited about is our on-press prints. We selected local artists, and then those local artists selected local nonprofits, and they came in and did private lessons in our studio to make prints for those nonprofits. So this is an example of 8 of the current 16 that we have, and we have another 6 in the works. So we sell them in our retail store, and half of the proceeds go towards the selected nonprofits. So this is a project that really we feel fulfills all aspects of our mission in terms of collaboration, community engagement, having an artist available space, all of these things. And we are really excited to see what the next 6 artists come up with. One of the major pivots for us in the retail store over the past, since 2020, has been pivoting most of our business online. When the pandemic first hit, our online store was run through a program that wasn't very effective for us. So I went through the process of really swapping everything to Weebly, if that's interesting to anyone here. Kind of particular to us is that because we have the in-person space, our inventory has to stay very accurate. So Weebly has worked very well for us. So this is an example of our online store. We do local pickup and shipping within the USA. The next project I'd like to talk about is our protest poster project. So last summer, our store and studio were still closed or very limited hours by the end of the summer. We launched a free protest poster project as a way to support Black Lives Matter protests happening within our city. It's really a way that we felt we could champion, we could serve our community that we existed within. We started with 4 standard designs, and we had a really overwhelmingly positive reception where those were gone within like 2 days. So then in turn, we decided to open it up with a free form online where people could submit their own like 2 to 5 word protest poster saying, and we printed them out. So it really took over our studio. All 3 or 4 of us were in here printing for days. And as you can see on the left, like they just kind of covered everything. We put out a free bin that's our studio door on the right, and we put out a free bin where people can come and pick them up, which we still have. And then we also, when people ordered online, we gave them 10 to 20 of their custom selection. I feel very strongly about this project. Detroit is a city that has 80% plus of Black folks. And so as like a white run space, it's important for us to use our tools to help that community. And this was a way that it's what the print shop's for. Like it really is the power of the multiple, and we got to serve the people in this way. This is an example of some ways online that people tagged us. So one of the coolest things about this project was seeing the way like the multiple worked and the fingers really spread, because we gave a stack to people and people can still come in and take like a bunch. They're not precious, like they're meant to be distributed and they're meant to be given away and used. And so it's really been encouraging even just to walk around and like see them in people's windows or have people tag us online. And we are very, very proud of this project. So. This is an example of just some of the variety that we got as the election rolled around. We ended up getting a lot more vote posters, which is also really cool. They're actually headed to the special collections of the Library of Congress, to the Henry Ford Museum, and the special collections of the University of Michigan. And we're digitally documenting each one of the ones we make, and we plan on doing an online display sometime in the future. We really feel that for these posters to be archived like marks this moment in 2020 and 2021 in our ongoing movement and fight for racial justice and conciliation. So moving along, our studio manager, Joel Grothaus, is going to talk about our studio program. So.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to help present the studio side of what we do. Again, my name is Joel Grothaus, and I've been at Signal Return since about when we opened. I just missed the first few months, so since 2011. So I've definitely grown in Letterpress myself with the studio, and it's been great meeting all the different people that have come to the market and just walked in our door and asked what it is that we do. So I've existed primarily on the studio side. My background's in illustration, so it's been great to learn more about type through hand setting and that's been a big part of what we've done in the space. Let's see. So I didn't realize Daniel was going to show you the storefront earlier, but I chose a picture with a Model T in front of it since we're the Motor City. So this is just kind of the front of our space on our street. And another car photo of the market. It's really been huge in the studio on Saturdays to have so much walk-in traffic, as Daniel was saying. So a lot of conversations have happened from people walking in and just asking who we are. And I've really loved that aspect of being in the space. This is a shot of our proofing presses lined up. A big part of my job has been helping to keep these running as efficiently as I can. So since we have so many hands working on different projects in the studio, this really is an ongoing project, which is just maintaining presses. And any of you that have presses know how much work this can be, not only in understanding the characters of each model, but you know, getting into a routine of how to maintain them while so many people are using them in different contexts. This is in the similar space. If you come in to visit, obviously this is a pre-pandemic view of workshops that we've had, but workshops have been, and just groups of people coming in have been a big part of our programming on the studio side. So we have people coming in who have never done any printmaking before, to designers, to other printmakers, wanting to learn more about letterpress and how to incorporate it into their work, or just to try something new. This is the view from the studio, sort of looking towards the store. So our space is very much physically split in two. And that's kind of a unique model, I think, in terms of the layout, but a lot of people walk into the store and then have questions, and often it leads to a tour from there. Our studio has grown over the years with different type that we've collected from different places. A lot of those have been from studios that were either family owned locally, or an independent practice where someone might have passed away and someone reached out to donate, or sales that have come across their way that have come to our attention. So again, collecting things, just like the presses, you know, you accumulate more type over time, and that becomes a project in and of itself that is really ongoing, is just maintaining not only the organization, but just the approachability of all the type. So I just wanted to walk through quickly the presses we have. This is a Triumph proofing press, so it's a little more unusual. This is a German press. You can see the angled gear tracks, which is kind of unusual on a proofing press. This is one of the recent acquisitions to the studio, which is a SP15. Some of you might be familiar with this one. And this is a number 4. I'll talk a little bit more about this one. This is our most recent press added to the collection. This is a Universal 1 press. And then we have 3 tabletop presses. I forgot to mention, we have a slightly larger proofing press, a Vandercook, which has a slightly bigger bed size, which is the 325 as well. I forgot to add a photo in there. One of my favorite tools is the Hammond saw, the glider saw. We use this a lot for linoleum, and I think it's been surprising how much we end up doing wood cutting in the studio. I think that was a surprise when I first started. So this has been a great tool as well to have. Part of what we field in the studio is custom jobs for other organizations and other artists as well that come into the space. So this was a recent job that we did for Inside Out Literary Arts, which is an organization that does literary programming for youth. So this was one of their student poets. So this was hand set from our collection, and then combined with, I made this butterfly. This is my illustration side coming through out of some punctuation. So we ended up printing that with polymer plates. This was a job from a local design studio called Hobbs. And Hobbs wanted to make some prints for an artist series they were doing as thank yous. And they actually were interested in coming in and participating in the printing, which is always fun. So as a studio that worked mostly on computers, they came in and got a chance to print in a hands-on way. And they really had a great time. We had a great time having them in. This was a cool story. And this is just an example of some of the kind of magical jobs that come in from people in the community who hear about us. This garden center, Detroit Garden Center, was an organization that existed for 90 years in the city. And they unfortunately were going to be closing their doors and have a final event. And so the director came in and he brought this book with an old book plate, and he had a box of printing plates, and he asked us if we would be able to replicate this. And so it was really fun to take those blocks from their archive and make a print. So that they actually gave these away at their final event, which was really kind of a special way to bring those plates back to life. This is Lindsey Mccaw. She recently came in. She's a musician, and she also works at the puppet theater, but then she also carves blocks. And so through time in the pandemic, she was carving at home, and she walked in with this carved block and asked us if we could run an edition for her before she went on tour. And so this was the result of that. I thought they came out really amazing. And you can see her carved block on the bed of the press back there. This was the print earlier that Dania mentioned from our Detroit Riverfront project. This again is kind of my illustration side coming through, but I did end up hand carving those blocks. They wanted to see that texture in the mix, and combined it with some type that matches that found in our collection. This is G-Day. He's been coming in recently as part of the On Press project that Dania also mentioned earlier. So this is pretty big for us because this is a sign of moving past the pandemic to have people, you know, obviously we're still in the middle of it, but at least, you know, we're not totally shut down. We're slowly having people come back in. And G-Day's been working on carving some blocks as part of the series. The On Press project, the result will be additions for other nonprofits. And so I'm really excited to see how these progress moving forward. This is a fun story recently about one of the #4 press that we got. Someone reached out to donate a press to us, which is always an unusual thing to have pop up. And the story is that someone studying in Detroit bought a press with a few friends, and they named their group the Babes in the Woods. They wanted to get together and use this press. And unfortunately, one of the friends passed away. And so the project kind of fell to the wayside and the press wasn't used. And so this many years later, I think it's been 35+ years, they reached out to donate the press to us since they're going to have to move locations. So this is what we came upon in finding the press, and there's always a new adventure when you have to restore something. So Lynn and I went over there with our vacuum and a broom and started checking out this press. This is a mouse nest inside, just signs of sitting for so long. Once we kind of did the initial dust off, our friend Gerald from Small Works Detroit helped to load the press up onto a trailer, and we made it back to the studio. And this started a long process of me calling my friend Paul Moxon down south, who knows a lot about these presses. You probably are aware of Paul if you have a Vandercook. And Paul gave me some useful insights into fixing up the press. And so we ran into a point at which the foot pedal on this press was completely frozen, meaning that the only way to fix it was to take the bed off, which was something that felt completely overwhelming to me, until another friend helped rig a crane or a hoist on our I-beam there, and it was conveniently located above the press. So we got the top off. And this is late nights. And I guess I'll say this pandemic time, while it's been slow, provided the window to really lean into this project. I think it would be really tough to have a fully operational studio and tackle a press restoration like this. So while I was painting the press, you know, I was painting with some enamel, which can be smelly. And so I had to find late windows of time to paint the press while nobody was in the studio. The motor needed repairing, and so we ended up ordering a new one. I've never wired a motor before. And then this is kind of the big moment when just a couple days ago, Kevin printed for the first time on the press. And so we very much reached the end of this process, and I'm super excited to say that we can have people printing on this now. So that feels really great. And swapping out this press for the old press that sat here kind of levels out our press offering. So all of the presses we have are now motorized, and we don't really have a proofing press that is actively going to be avoided because it is a little harder to use. It just makes everything a little bit more approachable. So this has been an exciting thing. This is a funny little side note, just from working in the print shop. This box represents an organizational system that I feel like has helped keep things moving smoothly. As I was talking earlier, with the shared space, you have so many people touching things and using things. And in the past, we collected these phone books to use to help clean up our ink. Maybe some of you use phone books or a similar process. And people started donating an endless supply of phone books. It feels almost obvious to talk about, but we just kept getting mounds of them. And so I created this box to essentially set the limit of how many phone books we could receive. And I feel like that principle is extended across several other means of organizing different tools and objects in the space that can grow roots and accumulate more. So this is another example of creating specific boxes for the furniture collection that we have. If you are in the business of buying and selling or receiving donations, you know that other items tend to wander in with the objects that come with what you're initially buying or receiving. And so these boxes also kind of set a limit for how much furniture we are going to take in. So this is my creative brain trying to make sense of the physical nature of all the little parts that pop up in the shop. And I wanted to show you this last thing that happened when my friend came in, who actually runs a laser cutting operation in Detroit. And we had a tray filled with coins. And if you're familiar with these coins and locking up with them, these can accumulate as well. And so we had basically a tray where they were loosely, people would use them and beginners would take from the pile and then put them back. And that is a recipe for them getting kind of, you know, bunged up over the course of time. And so I asked my friend at this shop if they could make some kind of organizer for these. And this has been a really successful organization tool. So I wanted to get a little bit into the nitty-gritty of some of the background things that happen that are easy to overlook when thinking about the studio, because they kind of should exist without being noticed, but they actually play a huge role in just maintaining sanity and mitigating some of that chaos that can happen. So they probably still have the files at Laser Rays. So if you reach out to Laser Rays in Detroit and you're interested in your own, they probably could make one for you as well. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, my colleague, and he's going to talk a little bit about also maintaining the studio and our type collection.
Thank you, Joel. Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Shurub. I've been with the Signal Return team for going on 5 years. I actually started here as an intern when I was still in school studying graphic design, and I was able to stick around and end up getting a job here. And it was actually my first experience with printmaking was when I started here at Signal Return. So as Joel said, I help maintain the studio and also help out with open studio management, job printing, and I also get an opportunity to print my own projects and have an opportunity to sell my work in the store, as well as working in the store on the weekends. But I'm going to talk today about one of the projects that I've been working on the past couple of years. It's a type identification project So as Joel said, we get a lot of equipment and type and tools donated from different sources or purchased from different sources, like independent printers or businesses and schools. And we had a big donation from the William Ellis family in Windsor. So this was our team a couple years ago, took a short drive across the bridge to Canada, and we found ourselves in this basement in Windsor of the William Ellis family. So here is us loading up the type, one cabinet and one case at a time, and then back across the river, back into our studio. So this was a beautiful collection from William Ellis. He was a commercial printer, and he had hundreds of beautiful typefaces and illustrations and cuts. And I've been slowly going through the collection, and as well as the hundreds of galleys that he left intact with these beautiful lockups. You can see that he was really like a master of his craft. Everything was locked up super tight and clean and tied up, and just have to wipe off a little bit of dust, and then I'm able to get into these specimens and going through each of these one by one and identifying each face and finding the respective drawer or case that it goes into. And this is kind of a good example of some of the variety that he gave us. It's a lot of metal type and a lot of smaller stuff, 6-point up to like 36 is kind of where the common sizes lay. And he also had a huge collection of the printed materials that he was making. And this is a cool kind of blast from the past, a lot of 80s and 90s memorabilia, a lot of events that he was assisting with, a lot of really cool perforation tickets and business cards, and just kind of takes you back to a simpler time, and also showcases the beautiful collection of type that we get to work with now. And then some of the tools that I use for identifying, we have a master list of the typefaces that were donated, and it's pretty comprehensive. There's still a few holes that need to be filled, and as well as this American Metal Typefaces guide that's kind of been my Bible throughout this whole process to help me identify some of these mysterious typefaces. So in addition to identifying and distributing the faces, I'm also printing specimen sheets for our catalog and archive to go along with our already existing collection, and just show you more of the examples of the beautiful type that was donated. And then as well, these can be cut down into labels that will be used on the cases. So a lot of them they have labels or they're handwritten, but there's still a few that are unidentified or just have kind of lines of type that were set. So some of these we know these as the spring ball typeface or the pig roast typeface for now, but hopefully they'll have the official names soon. And then another cool detail in this project is things kind of coming full circle. A lot of these cases and cabinets were actually once housed in Detroit, not far from our studio, and as well as like the equipment from Grand Haven, Michigan and stuff like that. It's cool just seeing things come back into our city. And as I said, we get to use this beautiful collection now, and we're already starting to apply it in projects. This is a close-up of Perpetual Calendar that Lynn made, and all the months were set in type from this collection, and we're just kind of paying homage to the family and continuing the William Ellis legacy by using this collection and preserving it and kind of spreading the word about him and his typefaces and stuff like that. So that's about it for me. Lynn's gonna hop back on.
Thanks to the Signal Return team for all this amazing work that they've shared with you. The last project is a new one for us that will end up as a printed project. At this point, we're more in the generating images and text for this. We Exchange, which is putting 6 Detroit area writers with 6 Detroit visual artists to explore the idea of change. I originally thought of this as a kind of extension of, or a riff on Exquisite Corpse, the idea that one artist starts a project, the second artist adds on to it until it becomes something totally new and different at the end. I have often talked with my friend Nichole Christian about ideas and collaboration, and this whole project is about collaboration. So I'm actually going to turn it over to her as co-director to expand a little bit on this project. Is she unmuted?
Unmute myself. I'm here. So as Lynn said, this is pretty much a collaboration that really started with a phone call. Lynn had this idea. She said she wanted to explore the notion that collaboration could happen, even in a pandemic, even in a time when everything is siloed. So we sat literally outside and she had the notion of that. I paired it. I came up with the idea of the quote, just looking at Octavia Butler, because this quote very much mirrors what felt like the time that we were in. The quote is not meant to be the muse. It was just meant to be a jumping off point for the artists that we selected to kind of explore how change and how the pandemic really has forced them possibly into new creative processes, possibly into new personal processes. This project, when it is finally done, one of the beautiful things about it that unfortunately I think the viewer won't see is the process, the behind the scenes part. And that is the process of getting folks to explore in ways that they've known on their own, but then come together and collaborate and take a piece that starts from a writer, or a piece that will, in the end, the writer and visual artist will be paired together, but the artists really have to be willing to just dive into the unknown, see where this quote takes them, and then explore from the creations of their other visual artists. Let me back up. The visual artists get to look at each other's work and they will build from there. The literary artists are reading each other's work and they will build from there. In the final phase of this 3-phase project, we will pair a visual artist and a literary artist, and they'll create a response. And from there, Signal Return will print it and we'll make it public. And what you'll find is that what we're finding in meeting with the artists is that they are very much building a community amongst themselves in this already. And it just sort of expands on what's one of the things I think makes Signal Return such a beautiful place. It creates community. It uses an art form that a lot of people have forgotten about or had no relationship to, brings them back into the space sometimes, but also back into relationship with words, with art, and with a slower time. So our artists are getting a total sense of that, and we're going to share with the community in an exhibit a year later, almost a year from now, and open for any questions. The other thing I'll say is that I'm a former Signal Return board member, and it's been really beautiful to see how this art form that you would think pretty much requires artists to work along, printers to work along, how this one space has welcomed the community in. And I'm looking forward to the ways that that'll happen if we ever go back to anything close to normal. But I'm really happy to have this project be a part of its effort to stay relevant and to stay. There's a lot of excitement around this project. It's completely unknown. That's why we can't tell you what it's going to look like. The artists ask often what they're doing. We don't know, but it's pretty much mirroring the times that we're in. So, Lynn, I probably didn't cover everything, but
That's great. Thank you.
and you can see behind my head also.
Oops. I think I'm going to stop screen sharing and thank everyone for their contributions here. And maybe there are questions for any and all of us. Thanks, Nichole.
Well, I have some questions. I'll try not to dominate. But anyway, in a way, Nichole answered one of them partly when she mentioned she had been a board member. I was going to ask about that sort of layer of Signal Return. So you've got a board of how many people? How does that function with the way you guys function?
We have 13 board members from a wide section of the community with, thank goodness, some very important skills. Our board chair is a CPA, which is incredibly helpful in especially navigating this time. She made it possible for us to get PPP loans for the organization, and has helped me with the financial parts of grant writing. And we have others that are involved in arts as arts activists. One of our current board members is on this call as well. So they're a very active and supportive board. Last year we had they put out a challenge to the community that they would pledge $25,000 if the community matched it, and it was matched, and then they matched. So we have 100% financial participation from our board. So that's sort of the background of how the board functions.
I think one relevant point as a former board member is that any board is only as good as the person kind of guiding it from staff level. And when I was on the board, one of the things that Lynn made sure that the board members knew was to have an immersion in the process. You know, if we wanted, we could learn. I wouldn't dare say I learned to be a printer, but just at least learn how to use the language, learn what furniture is, learn why it's important to even have the space open, and from the artistic point of view, but also just from community standpoint. And so it gave both a connection to the nitty gritty parts of being a board member, but a way to speak about it so that you might pick off whatever part was personal to you. And, you know, holiday events, just watching folks who would have no connection to this art form kind of come down for events and get surprised by their own discoveries.
You know, I really like that. And I think about the program of just giving away the posters. It's such a great way to share the press. And we certainly know so well that history of public protest posters. And it's such an important part of our history that keeping it going is pretty cool. One of the things that I wondered about, because you guys have such good programming and you're not a big staff, which I can certainly relate to, how do you make the decision? You know, I mean, you've got a lot going on. How can you manage so many projects? You seem to adapt on the fly pretty well.
I think it's a collaborative effort. You know, if someone has a really good idea, we try to make it happen. Does anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say it largely has to do with that very thing, is just keeping an open mindset to how to solve different event or programming issues, and coming together and deciding how we can use our strengths to solve it. And I think you're right. I think it has taken a lot of on-the-fly decision-making, but we've kind of learned over time as a team how to work together to do that. So I'm not sure you could lay out a template for how to do it other than we've just learned and stayed open. I think maybe that's part of our personalities as artists, is to have a sense of openness to possibilities, where we're working with limited, often parameters or supplies or materials, and then solving things from there. So it's a lot like an art project.
Mm.
And one more thing, not to say anything about the academic world, but we're not, I guess, bound by committees or, you know, the kind of structure that a university might have. So if we can find the funds and the means to do it, and we all decide it's worthwhile, then we're going to try and make it happen.
I appreciate that a lot. I think back to Hamilton early on, when sometimes it was just as easy as Steph turning to me and saying, "What do you think about doing this?" And I'd say, "Okay," and that was the end of the discussion. But she had a really good question that we were talking about earlier. can the public come in for open studio hours or rental? Is that a possibility there?
We're slowly starting to do that. I'll let Joel and Kevin talk about how it works.
Yeah, that was a pretty large part of our programming before the pandemic. Our model was that people would come in and they would take workshops in the space, and we established that people would take 2 workshops in order to be eligible to rent press time for open studio. And so that was to make sure people were getting the lay of the land and to get to know our equipment and where things were. And then they could come back and work on their own projects through signing up for slots on our calendar. So we had to put that on pause as we've navigated all the pandemic ups and downs. But that is something we're trying to slowly get back into. And like I said, buttoning up some of the press updates and moves, like while we had a slow time, actually worked out fairly well. So it's exciting now to switch gears into kind of opening the doors more for people to come and use those presses. So that's sort of where we're at.
Because I'm thinking those people who are living, you know, within, probably 100 or 200 miles really want to know how can they volunteer to help out at Signal Return. So it's good to know there's a way they can do that if they want to.
Yeah, we're excited to have more people physically coming back to the space. And we're always open to those conversations if someone wants to get involved, if they have a specific interest or a way that they do want to get involved.
I'm going to unmute and ask a quick question. Do you guys have a crew of volunteers that help make things happen there at Signal Return?
We always, yes. There are people that, come and go either from the board or friends of the shop that they might not officially call themselves a volunteer, but that's what they're doing. They're assisting with knowledge or helping us move heavy things or provide tools. And so that openness to having people come and help has been huge for us over the years, and we wouldn't be where we are without volunteers showing interest. We had interns in the past coming and going, but again, that has kind of slowed down just from us being in the place where we are right now.
And Lynn has quite a touch in getting and drafting people, so you might not, the term volunteer might not be the only term. If she gets to know you, there's something there to be attracted to for everyone. I mean, if you love words, there are old typewriters laying around. It's an amazing space.
Can I ask a little bit about the funding? Certainly the board has assistance there, and there is the shop. Is the city helping out in any ways, or is it? Are there any grants or things like that that help keep the wheel turning?
Yeah, I would say most of our operating budget does come from grants. We have been pretty regularly supported by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs. There's an organization in town called Culture Source, which at the, a couple months into the pandemic, reached out to other foundations and gathered up funds for emergency grants, and we were lucky to get one of those. But we have a pretty robust foundation community here that supports us. So that's what is the basis for our budget, but then there's everything else helps a lot. The store, selling product, doing job printing, all together, those things all actually matter very much to us. The budget that we have actually though does only support all of us to be here part-time. None of us are full-time employees. So just think about all we get done with the time that we do have.
I promise this is the last butt in for me, but I will say this. One of the things that's also remarkable is that with that budget, when there are projects that involve outside artists, there's an insistence that the artists are paid for their time, paid for their work. And that I think really continues to respect Detroit itself as an arts community. So for each of the projects that I've been involved with, from the board stands to we exchange. And I think it continues to build a relationship that artists who aren't printers have with the space and with the intentions of the space.
That is important to us, that artists get paid. It's not enough to say, this will be great for your career, or this is a very interesting experience. We expect that they'll get compensated for the time that they're spending with us and making work. So the on-press that Dania mentioned, as she said, half of all the prints are $80. We wanted to make them very affordable for people. And some of these artists are very well known and respected. So to be able to afford an original limited edition by them is something that we also wanted to have happen in the community. But the artists that are involved in this project are receiving honoraria upfront or in payments as they are involved with the project. So the grants that I've written make sure that, you know, the artists are compensated.
Mm-hmm. Lynn, is that an open call process, or do you keep a running list of people you would simply like to be associated with?
Yeah, it's invitation to participate. We've had this project funded 3 times, first by the Wingate Foundation, and then the Knight Foundation, and then a foundation here, the Kresge Foundation, is funded what probably will be the last iteration. And Joel is working to finish up with the last 6 artists. We did 6 before the world shut down, and then we have actually just 5 to finish through Kresge funding.
And just to remind the audience that feel free to put your questions into the chat. Otherwise, I'll feel like I'm asking too many and not sharing time. But until the next one pops up, could you give me your thoughts a little bit on the arts community in Detroit? I mean, you seem to be a big part of it, and it sounds like there is a growing community there.
There's always been a community here of really good artists, people that have stayed, you know, went to school here or gone to school other places and came back, but it's vibrant and rich and deep. And if we had a lot of money, we would be inviting more artists into the space. There's no dearth of talent here. Do you want to add anything about? You know, there's, yes, no? Yeah, we feel.
All of you guys are artists.
We're all artists. Yes, that is true.
There is a question in the chat about having Lynn or Joel speak to the decision to avoid automated presses or larger platens.
Yeah, I can just say that because we're a teaching studio, we're not a production studio. Those presses, if you don't know what you're doing, smash type and smash fingers. So we made a conscious decision not to bring those in. And we're really pretty much out of space. So that's not even you know, we're pretty tight in the space that we have. But mostly it's not really, for us, it doesn't make sense to teach with those presses.
Can I ask about the beginnings? I know it goes back to what, 2011?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like in the beginning accumulating it? You know, what did you have for help and that kind of thing, just to assemble what you've got?
The studio opened in 2011. It was originally a possible partnership with the College of Creative Studies to maybe have guest artists come into town as guest lecturers, to go to CCS, and then come to Signal Return and make prints. But there was a big shuffle, dust up maybe, in some of the organizational beginnings. So I'm actually the 3rd director. And I think when I got here, there was very little in the way of equipment and type. And so we just set about there was actually a linotype machine in here, which we were never, ever going to set up and use. So we had to lose that and a press called a Glockner that someone brought in that we were never, ever going to set up. So there were some things we had to get rid of. And then we started bringing in presses and like Joel said, receiving donations of some really beautiful, usable wood type and metal type that we started to build the collection in the space.
How many drawers of type do you have?
We don't know.
We've counted
A lot.
Hundreds. Hundreds.
50 cabinets, somewhere around 50 cabinets.
I know why you're running out of room.
Yeah.
But you do have an overhead hoist. That I think is the most impressive thing because every shop I think needs one of those.
Yeah, that was brought in by a friend of the shop just maybe about a week and a half ago. So
Really?
that was brought in specifically to work on that one press, and it was the first time I've ever used one. So I will agree though that I now see the usefulness of having it, especially if you're working on taking the bed off of a press. Because I think our only other option from what I've heard is maybe using an engine hoist, which probably could have worked as well, but this was very convenient, absolutely.
There is a question asking about your collective thinking on the longevity of your metal type. I don't understand the question myself, but I'll let you handle that.
I get this one?
Well, one thing to note, I guess, so we are like a teaching space. So a lot of the type cases that I was showing from the Windsor collection, the Ellis collection, we marked with red dots to indicate that they were off limits to like our students who are in workshops. Just because they might not be as experienced, they might be smashing into some of the type or not taking the best care of it. So that's kind of one note on how we kind of preserve some of those. Those are kind of off limits to students, but artists and staff can use those specimens. Kind of like one thing to note. Anything else? Longevity.
One thing that I think Joel had mentioned earlier is there was a project you were working on, and you said it sort of draws out your illustration side. Is that a background that you brought to it that you want to tell us about?
Sure. I studied illustration at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit. And so my background's really in drawing and painting. I started out in school as a graphic design major, but then switched to illustration. So my type knowledge was less, I guess, coming out of college. And so it has been fun to incorporate it. As I got more familiar, we do a lot of linoleum carving and work in the studio. And so that's been a fun vehicle to embrace this idea of the multiple using illustration. And so it's been fun to not only do that for custom projects where appropriate, but also to teach workshops that relate to transferring drawings onto carved blocks. And so we do have a lot of other artists that focus more on image making versus typesetting. And so part of, like when you were talking about adapting on the fly, it is a useful thing if it's an appropriate or more illustration heavy project, I should say.
Yeah, a great skill to have.
Thank you. Yeah, I think drawing is always, whether it's laying out ideas or implementing imagery in projects is a great thing. I'm always grateful to have some background in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys have been great. This has been really a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing a really thorough job. And great to have Melinda and Nichole on as well, just to get such a nicely rounded story about the place. And you guys are really impressive. I take my hats off to you, and completely forgot that you weren't all full time. And then it's just like, wow. So thanks for knocking it out.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for having
Thanks.
us.
Thank you, guys.
Come to Detroit.
Yeah, yeah,
Keep your eyes out for We Exchange.
yeah, yes, good. Thanks for reminding us. Well, I will just give you a little bit of information, other than the fact that, you know, you can certainly find signalreturn.org online to find out more about them. But from the Hamilton perspective, you can register for next week, which will be Rich Kegler speaking about his exhibit that is currently at Hamilton. Rich, you may recall from P22 or the Western New York Book Arts Center. But anyway, that should be a really great talk. And so the hangs, like I mentioned early on, have been recorded. So you can come to the website, woodtype.org, and find those all 60, 70, something like that. It's a lot. But how great to get yet another one with somebody like Signal Return. We're lucky. The way we can keep doing this is by people becoming members. So, you know, if you want to join the Hamilton organization, you can certainly go to the website as well under the membership. Our annual conference, the Ways Goose, is open for registration. That is, I believe, November 5th and 6th. And so you can sign up online. And while we won't get to bring everybody in this year, we're still going to do it, and we'll try to make it as fun as possible. I think it'll be a pretty good event. So thank you all. What a great day. I appreciate it. And man, have a good weekend. It's Friday, so we got that going for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Hmm?
All right. So long.
See ya.